Hello dear viewer, I already made an Aquilo spaceship video in the past. But the amazing thing about Factorio is you never stop learning and there's always room to make things better and more efficient. Which is why I created a new, even better one. The core principle of this new ship is simplicity. Most ships I see elsewhere try to solve problems by introducing complex solutions, for example, trying to control things with a lot of circuit logic. Which is why those ships look like little spider webs full of cable spaghetti. If you're new to my channel, that's not the way I want to design. I love simplicity and symmetry. Let me show you step by step how this spaceship works and how I made the previous design better. We start with a bare bones platform. The ghost on the right is the old Aquilo spaceship for comparison. The new ship is 8 tiles wider. Width in Factorio space age causes ships to go slower, which in this case is actually desired, because speed has to be limited to safely make it through the big asteroid fields. Previously I reduced speed by controlling the thrusters with circuit logic. This feature has been removed because it's not necessary on this ship. The max speed is a result of the quantity of thrusters, ship width and fuel production speed. A chemical plant, each using advanced fuel recipes and 3 thrusters combined on this platform, results in a pulsing 120 to 170 km per second travel speed, which is safe given the amount of defensive turrets. I also significantly increased the number of cargo bays to increase storage space. 24 cargo bays ensure a massive throughput and the capability to use it for any task that comes to mind. The front of the ship is similar though, gun turrets and rocket turrets pulling ammo and rockets from the main hub. I don't like it when the main defensive structures rely on ammo on belts. Storing ammo in the hub has the advantage of having a lot of ammo in stock. Additionally, the quantity can then be used for waiting conditions. I control the asteroid collectors with circuit logic, only grabbing asteroids that are needed. This works by reading the asteroid belt content and using a combination of a constant and decider combinator. The sushi belt only holds asteroids, nothing else. This is probably the most significant difference from the old ship, which used one sushi belt for all products, asteroids, intermediate items and ammo. Sushi belts have one major downside. The moment a machine requires new materials, there are possibly the wrong items on the belt at that specific time, which leads to machine downtime. Also, insertion of items onto sushi belts needs to be carefully balanced to not overfill the belt, which would lead to a complete loss of production. Both issues reinforce each other, as limiting item quantities only creates wider gaps for each item type on the belt. Instead of putting everything on one combined sushi belt, instead I went with dedicated belts, allowing items to smoothly buffer right before they enter the machines. Let's take a look at this setup in detail. Starting with the crushers, which have a 1 tile extra belt buffer for incoming asteroids. Asteroid reprocessing is not necessary, and since we don't have to deal with insertion limits, as opposed to the sushi belt solution in the past, there's no circuit logic or belt reading at all. Since we are utilizing the advanced thruster fuel recipes and foundries, we have to produce calcite, while rocket production requires sulfur. This means we have to crush asteroids with the advanced recipes as well, at least for carbonic and oxide asteroids. This creates a problem players have to deal with. Every time a recipe outputs 2 products, we have to deal with one product potentially overflowing and thus stopping production entirely. One way to deal with it is to throw items off the platform or get rid of excess items by recycling. But I found something better. Automatic balancing by using the normal crushing recipes as a backup for the product that is underproduced. Let's look at the oxide asteroid crushing. We need way more ice than calcite, and producing energy requires only ice, no calcite. Based on this premise, the problem is calcite possibly overflowing, which stops the ice production. But if that happens, there's another crusher with a normal crushing recipe, producing ice and filling the void. The important trick is to set up the crusher, belts and inserters in such a way that the outgoing ice cannot overflow the entire belt. See, in this case, the outgoing inserter cannot drop items. Items coming from the advanced recipe crushers has automatic priority, because these items enter the belt earlier up the line. The same method is used for carbonic asteroid crushing, where sulfur tends to cause an overflow. From here on it's just Factorio 101, belt spaghetti and combining products on belts to feed the machines. I love solving these belt puzzles, trying to route the belts in a confined space in such a way that everything works as intended without it looking too crowded. The resulting products will automatically buffer on those belts, which causes a very stable production speed. The two types of ammo, magazines and rockets, enter a dedicated belt in the back of the ship. This way I can supply the rear end gun turrets and launchers. The belt is finding its way towards the middle of the ship, where I again installed defensive turrets for asteroids that might come close when orbiting planets. Then finally the ammo reaches the main hub, where a large quantity is stored and used for ship waiting conditions. The only circuit logic you see on the screen is controlling this pump over here to make sure there's always 5k water in the tank. This is important to prioritize the water supply for the nuclear reactors. Speaking of nuclear reactors, the last piece of the puzzle is producing power, because relying on solar panels doesn't work far away from the sun. The ship only requires a very low amount of energy. Actually, the few solar panels are able to fully power the ship in Vulcanus' orbit and decently well in Norvus' orbit. Which is great, because you can basically build the ship in those orbits and get it started even without having to power the reactor first. But enough beating around the bush, let me show you the reactor setup. This time I only use one single reactor. Again, we don't need much energy, so 2 turbines with 5.8 megawatts each are already overkill for this ship. The same is true for the 2 heat exchangers. And wait a second, why in the world are there some heat pipes that do nothing, you might ask? Well, actually they are very important to min-max the efficiency of the reactor. See, the insertion circuit logic triggers when the reactor falls below 550 degrees. A single uranium fuel cell will heat it up, but the temperature will not go beyond 1000 degrees. The reason is the 2 heat exchangers and the 6 heat pipes as heat buffer. Without them we would go beyond 1000 degrees and lose energy. Since the ship only draws around 3 megawatts or so, fuel cells will last a very long time. Refueling works with an interrupt I set up for this purpose in the schedule, which means you can, for example, let the ship alternate between Fulgora and Aquilo, and if fuel cells are needed, the ship will automatically go to Norvus for refueling. No need for further logistics trying to move fuel cells to Fulgora first with a different ship. Finally, let me show you one more detail. I always disliked having to set up multiple conditions for each stop. In this case, we have to ensure a certain amount of magazines and rockets. To make this simpler, I added a decider combinator over here. The platform is set to read its contents, sending the information to the platform and vice versa. The 2 conditions will be checked in the combinator, and if true, we simply output a star symbol. Now, every stop in the schedule only has to evaluate this signal. The time past waiting conditions you see for each stop will be removed in the future, since Factorio 2.1 will fix some issues with platforms leaving orbits too quickly. You will of course find the blueprint of this ship in the description below. Supporters on Patreon also get a rare and legendary version of this ship. And there's a very small add-on to farm iron and copper ore for Aquilo. This way you only have to transport some stone, plastic and calcite to make all required basic items there. Thanks for watching, bye.